On this episode of the Hockey Nuts podcast, we'll have all the exciting NHL headlines and highlights from the last weekend of the preseason, including transactions, injury news, and suspensions. Plus, we'll get you set for the opening weekend of the NHL regular season. All this, plus some college hockey talk, the KHL Minute, and our picks of the week coming up next. This is the Hockey Nuts podcast, Season 1, Episode 10. Recorded on Wednesday, October 12th, 2016. NHL regular season begins.
Shut up and sit down.
Bottom of the fourth, and we'll see a D here. Jacob Slavin with a long reach, big head fakes, backhands, he scores! Carolina wins the shootout.
The big rig used everything to his advantage, the wingspan, and got that backhand up in a hurry on Braden Holtby to give the home team the victory here in their last preseason game.
Highlights courtesy of Comcast Sportsnet.
8 minutes gone by in the second. Buchnevich moves in. Pass across. Here's Kreider to the net. He scores! That's the way they do it. Buchnevich with a good setup. Kreider with a finish. 2-1 Rangers.
Highlights courtesy of MSG.
Straight high slide. Here's Weiss right across the goalmouth. Reed had a gaping net, but if he'd been a left shot, here's Spooner on a breakaway with the game on his stick. He scores! Ryan Spooner sticks a fork in him. Well, there's your third star tonight. Nice lead pass by David Backes. This is what 3-on-3 is designed to do. Opportunities at both ends, wide open hockey, the skill guys on the ice, the speed guys. And Backes makes a nice little outlet pass. Philly get caught a little too deep. Not only a clean breakaway for Spooner, but the next man coming was Ehrhoff too. And Spooner finishes the game with a beautiful forehand wrist shot. Just he and Mason, that quick release in stride, high blocker, game over.
Highlights courtesy of NESN. Hello and welcome to another week of the Hockey Nuts podcast. My name is Wayne Halley. I'm here with Steve Ball. We've got a lot to talk about tonight as we record this. Today's Wednesday, October 12th. And for all of you hockey fans out there, it's also a very special day in that it's opening day for the NHL. How's it going, Steve?
Good to be with you, Wayne. Yeah, it's a good day indeed. I've been pumped all day long. Gosh, I don't know where I found the energy. It must be the adrenaline kicking in from getting ready to watch the games tonight.
Yeah, well, it's been a crazy day at work today, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to think about it. But now that I'm home and now that I'm talking hockey, I'm very excited too. So we're trying to squeeze in a recording of this week's podcast before the games get going tonight. I know we talked briefly before the show about the games for tonight anyway, and there's one game I'm in particular interested in seeing, and that's Calgary and Edmonton. I believe that's at Edmonton, right?
That's right. They open up Rogers Place
officially
tonight.
Yep.
I think 10 o'clock, if you have the center ice package, they'll have a pregame show.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching the well, I don't have center ice. I have the game center, but I'll be watching that on there anyway. And I'll probably be watching something online. I do have to go get my daughter tonight, so I won't be home probably till after the game starts, but I'll certainly be watching. But anyway, before we get started talking too much hockey, let's get you an update on the hurricane situation. I know we mentioned it last week that last week we recorded right before the hurricane came through. And well, since then, the hurricane has come through. The eastern part of the state is still suffering some major flooding issues.
Yes.
I know parts of I-95, and which is, if you're familiar with the U.S., I-95 is essentially the one major highway that connects Maine to Florida and everywhere in between. So to have that highway still out of commission is a big thing. And then Interstate 40, which is the major east-west highway going through North Carolina, that has parts of that are still closed today. So, and there's a lot of people going through a lot of issues out there, but we're safe. I made it through okay. I don't know. How about your property?
We're our property. We had a lot of rain. There was some standing water, but no flooding. Flash floods were broadcast, but that never came to pass. And so I know our prayers will go out to the people in the eastern part of the state. I heard that the Neuse River hasn't even crested yet. Won't crest till Saturday.
Yeah, there's a lot of water that fell. Yeah, there's a lot of water that fell that is just now starting to make its way towards the coast. So there's a lot of days ahead that some of these rivers are going to continue to rise. So it's too bad to see, too bad to hear, but hopefully those people will get through as best they can. Anyway, I'm just glad I don't live out that way.
Oh man.
It's been
it
crazy.
is flat as a pancake, the further east you go in this state.
Yeah, once you get east of Raleigh,
Yeah.
essentially it flattens out and it's all farmland out there. Those are all traditionally, I believe it was all tobacco fields long time ago, but nowadays with tobacco not being as big of a crop anymore, you see all kinds of stuff being grown out there, and it's flat as a pancake and it's barely above sea level. So
That's right.
the whole eastern half of the state. So yeah, they've really taken a beating out there. But anyway, yeah, as you can probably see if you watch our YouTube feed, if you look out the window behind me, you can tell that the street is actually several feet above my house. So, and we live kind of on a slanted property. So yeah, the rain came down hard in our town too, and it pretty much just ran through our yard and down the back of the yard and into a small creek that's down in behind our house. But other than that, we didn't have any major issues either.
That's good.
So,
That's good to hear.
So, all right. Well, on to hockey. So what we'll do is we'll briefly recap the games that took place at the tail end of the preseason. And in fact, I'll insert that recording right about here. Okay, the following are the scores in the National Hockey League for the final weekend of the preseason, and taking you all the way up through opening night of the NHL regular season. So we'll start with Friday, the 7th of October, and there were 5 games that night. The first game, the Washington Capitals traveled to the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Hurricanes beat them 3-2 in a shootout. The Red Wings traveled to the Maple Leafs and beat them 2-1. The Sabres traveled to Ottawa to play the Senators and came away with a 4-2 win. The Coyotes hosted the Sharks, and the Coyotes came out on top 3-1. And the final game of the night, the Dallas Stars traveled to Los Angeles to play the Kings and beat them 6-3. On Saturday, October 8th, there were 9 games around the league, and in the first game, the Vancouver Canucks traveled to Edmonton to play the Oilers and beat them 3-2. The Bruins hosted the Philadelphia Flyers and beat them 1-0 in overtime. The Pittsburgh Penguins hosted the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Blue Jackets came out on top 5-3. The Red Wings beat the Maple Leafs at Joe Louis Arena 4-3. The Tampa Bay Lightning hosted the Nashville Predators and beat them 5-3. The New Jersey Devils traveled down to Florida to play the Panthers, and the Panthers came out on top 4-2. The Minnesota Wild hosted the Winnipeg Jets and beat them 5-1. The St. Louis Blues hosted the Blackhawks and beat them 2-1. And in the final game of the night, the Avalanche traveled to Los Angeles to play the Kings and beat them 2-1. On Sunday, October 9th, was the final day of the preseason schedule in the NHL, and there were just 2 games. The Capitals hosted the New York Islanders and beat them 4-0. And in the other game, the San Jose Sharks traveled to Anaheim to play the Ducks, and the Ducks came out on top 3-2 in overtime. There were no games on Monday the 10th or Tuesday the 11th, so that takes us up to Wednesday the 12th, which was opening night of the NHL regular season. And on that night, there were 4 games. The Flames traveled to Edmonton to play the Oilers, as the Oilers were opening their brand new building, Rogers Place, and the Oilers won that game 7-4. The Maple Leafs traveled to Ottawa to play the Senators, and the Senators came out on top 5-4 in overtime. The Blues traveled to Chicago to play the Blackhawks and beat them 5-2. And in the final game of the night, the San Jose Sharks hosted the LA Kings and beat them 2-1. And that was all the action for the week leading up to the recording of this podcast. So what we'll do with the news stories for this week is, first, before we do that, is there anything you wanted to recap on the end of the preseason?
No, I mean, it's a good time for people to get to see the different players on the teams, especially your favorite team. Pretty much Monday, I would say it was, the season was over and rosters were decided on. So, the Rangers roster was put together immediately following preseason, and I'm thankful for the team that we have. And right now, gosh, no major injuries for us. So, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at this point, everybody's just looking ahead. Preseason's over. Now everyone's just looking all eyes ahead to the regular season. So.
That's right.
So am I with my Bruins, and of course our local team, the Carolina Hurricanes, as well. So with that, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and talk about all of the news that has happened on and off the ice this week. And I've got it grouped a little bit differently this week in that what we tried to do is group all of the signings and transactions into one group of stories, and then a group of injuries that we'll talk about. And then going forward after that, we have any suspensions there's a couple of those that we've been that we'll talk about, and then anything else that comes across our news feed. And then we'll finish the podcast by talking about a look ahead at the next week or so for the three teams of personal interest for us. And then after that, we'll go into our college hockey minute, our KHL minute, and our picks of the week. So let's go ahead and get started.
All right.
First group of stories we'll talk about is any signings and transactions that have happened since we last recorded. So the first big one, and it was a big one, Nikita Kucherov signed a 3-year contract with the Tampa Bay Lightning. This happened a couple of days ago. Well, yesterday, actually, as we record this on Tuesday. The contract is going to carry an average annual value of $4.76 million. That was probably one of the major restricted free agents left to sign. He played for Team Russia in the World Cup of Hockey, and he had 2 goals, 1 assist, and 13 shots on goal in 4 games. He led the Lightning last season with 66 points, and of course, that was probably because of Stamkos's fairly long-term injury, and was second on the team with 30 goals and led the team with 19 points in the playoffs.
Yes. Safe to say they would not have made the conference finals at all without Nikita Kucherov. He was...
No, certainly not with... Yeah.
He was their best player.
Certainly not with Stamkos being hurt until the very last game.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a huge signing for them. They got that one in under the wire.
Yes.
And another big signing, Johnny Gaudreau signed a 6-year contract with the Calgary Flames. Gaudreau, who's a restricted free agent as well, signed a 6-year deal on Monday. Financial terms of the contract were not released, but TSN reported an average annual value of $6.75 million.
Right.
So that gives it a total value of $40.5 million. That puts him just above Monahan, I believe. I think Monahan was either 6.25 or 6.5, something. I don't have it right in front of me, but that puts him there. And I had heard reports that Gaudreau was seeking $8 million a year.
I did too. In fact, I heard that extensively.
Yeah.
That's the reason for the holdout. As a matter of fact, when I heard he signed this contract at 40.5, I didn't think it was accurate.
Yeah.
I thought he was in for 50, 55 million for 6 years. And I was like, this can't be right.
Yep. Well, the Flames got it done at a lower value. They probably went to him and said, look, if you want to play for a winning team, if you having a bunch of guys that's at north of $7 million, it makes it very difficult to field out a competitive team from top to bottom. I mean, in my opinion, this day and age.
Yeah.
The teams that do a better job at keeping their top end guys down below, that $7 million mark are the ones that are going to have, it just gives you a better chance of having a deeper team and a better chance to win.
Right.
So, I mean, it comes right down to what's the player's priority? Does he want to make all his money and laugh all the way to the bank and never have a chance of winning the cup? Or do you concede a little bit so that the team has a shot at signing good players at the bottom end of the roster and give them a better team overall and a better chance of winning the cup? So I would think the latter would be what most players would choose. But then again, you and I have never been in a situation where we've been offered, north of $5 million a year. So yeah.
White knuckle time for Brian Burke, though.
Yeah.
If anybody can pull, he's a seasoned veteran manager. He knows he knows this game maybe better than anybody in the NHL. He knows exactly what to do, and he's not going to play chicken. So
yep.
He got it done, and as I said, I was surprised that it was for the amount of money.
Yeah, I was surprised seeing the reports that were as high as they were, and that he came in at under $7 million. I was thinking 7.5, 7 point. I was thinking right either at or just above what Monahan was making. So next story I've got, and it's actually a waiver claim. In fact, later on, I've got a list of all the different waiver claims, but this one came across my news feed a little bit higher up. So P.A. Parento was claimed by the New Jersey Devils. Parento, 33, signed a 1-year contract with the Islanders back in July, but was placed on waivers by the Islanders on Monday. Parento played parts of 8 seasons in the NHL with the Blackhawks, Rangers, Islanders, Avalanche, Canadiens, and the Leafs. He's got 268 points in 424 games. I guess the reason I had him as the headliner of the as the waiver claims is he's probably the best player of the group,
Yes.
Arguably anyway. But it's a good guess.
He is an excellent player. He played for the Rangers for several years, a year or two at least, maybe 3.
Yeah.
Super shootout player. I mean, if you need a goal in a shootout, put P.A. Parento on the ice.
Oh, really? Yep.
Oh, he's excellent. He's excellent. He won games for us. He won a game one time in Ottawa. He made a goal. I had to watch the replay. I still don't know how he made the goal. It was amazing. But,
wow.
His parents were in the stands. I mean, they were going nuts. Oh, it was – I really like P.A. Parento, and I hated when we traded him. But he's a journeyman. He goes to whatever team. He's not going to get a big salary. And he just goes to whatever team that needs help with offensive production.
Okay.
He's good on the power play. That's the kind of guy he is. Distributes the puck, scores when you need him to, and he's excellent in the shootout.
Well, good. And I think the Devils can use a guy like him as their roster is pretty lean these days, particularly at the forward position. So it's a nice pickup for the Devils. Too bad the Islanders, they signed him as a free agent on July 2nd. So he never got to play a game for them, at least not in the regular season. Chris Russell signed a 1-year contract with the Edmonton Oilers on Friday. There was a lot of speculation where he would end up because he was one of the probably the more, I don't know if you want to call it elite, the best remaining free agents available anyway. Particularly at the defensive position. So he's got a 1-year contract with the Oilers. It'll be worth $3.1 million according to Sportsnet. So he was in second in the NHL last year with 210 blocked shots in 62 games with the Stars and the Flames. Yeah. So second only to Francois Beauchemin, who had 256. Colorado. Yep, in Colorado. So yeah, he's a shot blocking specialist for sure. So
yes,
something that Edmonton needs. That has been one knock on the Oilers to this point for the last several years is, they've got all this wealth of talent up front, but their defensemen, a group of defensemen have been pretty weak, and they've been looking for an improvement there. So I think Chris Russell will see a lot of playing time in Edmonton, and I think he'll help that team quite a bit.
Right. I second that. I heard that I watched Peter Chiarelli when they got Adam Larson, and he said, of course, he's after defenseman is their top priority, and that's what they're looking for.
Yep.
He pulled the trigger on Taylor Hall, and now we'll get to another guy that they pulled the trigger on. So he's definitely making big changes with the Oilers. And I'm not sure that everything is really done yet with that team.
Yeah. Well, and in that light, we've got our next transaction. Nail Yakupov was traded to the Blues by the Oilers. And that also happened on Friday. He was the number 1 overall pick in the 2012 draft, and hopefully he should get a fresh start there in St. Louis. The Oilers received in return a prospect, Zach Pacero, and a conditional 3rd-round pick in the 27 NHL draft that will become a 2nd-round pick in the 2018 draft if Yakupov scores at least 15 goals for the Blues. So he's got Yakupov, for a guy who's only had, number 1 overall, he's only had 111 points in his career in 252 games. Those are pretty weak numbers for a number 1 overall pick, if you ask me. Granted, he was behind guys like Terrell Hall and, Eberle and, last year, Connor McDavid, of course. But he only had 8 goals and 15 assists in 60 games last season. So his development, at least in Edmonton, had stalled. So I think a change of venue is definitely needed. And putting him in St. Louis, where sounds like they're going to put him on a line with Tarasenko.
That's
You might see him come out of his shell a little bit there.
Ken Hitchcock opened him with, welcomed him with open arms. They're glad to get him. And, I watched a clip with Ken Hitchcock today talking about his rivalry with the Blackhawks. And how they seem to match up against each other every year in the playoffs. Well, this is a guy that they got scoring hopes for. And again, Edmonton moves a second big piece of their offensive, the stockpile of draft picks and players that they had over the years, a wealth of talent. So they're definitely making waves, and I don't know if they're going to make a big trade later or what the situation is, but there's a lot of stuff going on in Edmonton. I'm reading where Zach Pacero, I hope I have that name right, has never played an NHL game, and he's, if I'm reading this correctly, the most recent work he's had was with the Quad Cities of the ECHL. So they didn't get a lot for him.
Yeah. No, and I think if Yakupov ends up being, if he somehow finds a way to turn into the number 1 overall pick that the Oilers thought they were getting, if he ends up being that for St. Louis, this will turn out to be an absolute steal of a deal for St. Louis.
Letting Backus go and getting this guy, and he turns it around and becomes a force. It'd be a great move.
All right, let's move on. Another restricted free agent defenseman signed yesterday. Rasmus Ristolainen signed a 6-year contract worth $32.4 million with the Buffalo Sabres. The contract, which runs through the 21-22 season, has an average annual value of $5.4 million. He was skating with the Sabres during their training camp without a contract. He did play in the World Cup for Team Finland. He'll be 22 on October 7th, and dressed for every game last year, led Buffalo defensemen with 9 goals, 32 assists, and 41 points. He also led the team in average ice time per game at 25 minutes, 16 seconds, and ranked 10th among NHL defensemen. He was a first-round pick, number 8 overall, by the Sabres in the 2013 draft. He has 65 career points in 194 games in his first 3 seasons. So he is, without a doubt, at least currently, their number 1 guy on the blue line. So
defenseman, no question about it. I agree with you.
So signing him just before the start of the season, I think, was pretty probably number 1 on their priority list.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Defenseman Hampus Lindholm of the Ducks, Jacob Trouba of the Jets, and forwards Ricard Raquel of the Ducks, and at least from the list I've seen, are the remaining unsigned restricted free agents. So Lindholm and Raquel, I would expect will be signed shortly. Raquel's hurt right now, so until he gets healthy, there's no real big rush to sign him. Not sure what the holdup is on Lindholm. And Trouba, of course, we talked about in previous episodes, has requested a trade out of Winnipeg and probably won't sign until he gets traded. So, and there's a lot of speculation in Boston.
Yeah, I heard they ripped him. They're not gonna. The guys I heard aren't interested in him because they feel he might do something like that again. But then again, that's all speculation,
Yeah. The article I saw yesterday says that they specifically mentioned Boston as a possible destination because nobody needs defensemen as much as Boston does at this point. Citing Chara being up there in age, and he's got this year and next year left on his contract, and then that's it for him. And there's really nobody to take the baton from Chara as far as a number one guy. So at least not yet. There's a couple guys in their system, but they're not ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving on. A couple of Carolina Hurricanes stories we've got here. The team has agreed to terms with defenseman Jakub Nakladal on a one-year contract. The deal will pay Nakladal $600,000 for the 16-17 season. Nakladal, a 28 years old, appeared in 27 games with the Flames last year, totaling 5 points and 6 penalty minutes, averaging 14-11 of ice time per game. He's a Czech Republic native.
Yes.
He also appeared in 35 American Hockey League games with Stockton. Of course, he'll play for, if he ends up in the AHL, he'll play for Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
Got 14 points in those 35 games. And also, they have signed, they've acquired Connor Brickley from the Florida Panthers in exchange for forward Brody Sutter. Brickley will report to Hurricanes AHL affiliate in Charlotte. He made his NHL debut back on October 10th of last year as part of the Panthers' opening night roster. He played 23 games last year, scoring a goal and earning 4 assists, and averaged .843 of ice time per game. He's an Everett, Mass. native. Also skated in 45 games with the Portland Pirates of the American Hockey League. So a couple of depth signings there for Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's still a lot of fallout and whatnot, and change taking place in Carolina with all that youth and talent moving up. Stahl moving out. They acquired Teravainen and Bickle.
Yep.
I mean, there's changes. It's in flux at Carolina, and as you and I talked about it, I would not be surprised at all if they make the playoffs. They're definitely going to contend. And,
they're going to be better than they have been the last several years. But it's a team. It's a team that's constantly being speculated as a team that could be on the move. Although everything we've heard from the Carolina Hurricanes brass is that they're committed to staying here. They don't want to move. They've got a fantastic arena deal, financially speaking, and they think that that hockey can and do well in this area. And at the youth level, it does very well. There's thousands of kids playing hockey in this area now. So, anyway. Okay, speaking of Carolina, ex-Hurricanes player Chris Versteeg signed yesterday with the Calgary Flames, which was a surprise to me. Because all talk was because he skated with the Oilers during training camp.
Right.
And all the speculation was saying that he was going to sign with the Oilers, but at the end of camp, he determined, because he was only on a pro tryout with the Oilers, he signed a one-year deal worth $950,000 with the Flames. So almost sounds like he's a double agent that Calgary sent into Edmonton.
That's what I mean. That was really strange to see that.
Yeah.
But I could have told you he was going to get a contract somewhere.
Oh yeah, he's a great third, fourth line guy for sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
Calgary at $950,000. Money well spent.
Yes.
He will start. He will start tonight.
Oh yeah, he'll be on the ice tonight for sure.
Yeah.
In their first game against the Oilers. Yeah. Which will be interesting to see because he just played with them last week in the preseason. So
it's amazing.
Yeah. So, and the Flames also signed Nicholas Grossman to a 1-year, $575,000 contract on Tuesday.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay.
Yep. Grossman scored 3 goals and added 4 assists over 58 games with the Coyotes last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Swedish native and has 13 goals and 73 assists over 589 career games with the Stars, Flyers, and Coyotes. So, again, another depth signing. Okay. So let's go on to the waiver claims. Of course, at the end of preseason, all the teams have to make their final selections for their 23-man rosters. And the guys that are left either have to go down to the AHL, back to their junior teams, or just get outright released. And anybody who gets released or sent to the NHL or to the American Hockey League, if they're eligible anyway, the younger players can get sent down without penalty, but older players or more experienced players have to pass through waivers. So we had a number of waiver transactions yesterday as a result. We already talked about P.A. Parento,
That's correct.
who got claimed on waivers, and let's go through some of the other ones that I saw. Goaltender Mike Condon got claimed by the Pittsburgh Penguins. He was with Montreal last year. In fact, he played most of the games while Carey Price was hurt. And obviously Montreal wanted to make him their third string and send him down. He didn't make it through waivers. The Pittsburgh Penguins picked him up. Not a bad move for them considering Murray's injury status, and of course Marc-Andre Fleury at any time can get hurt too. He has been shown to be a little bit brittle at times in the last couple of years. Another player that got claimed was defenseman Klaus Dahlbach. Carolina Hurricanes claimed him. He played 71 games with the Coyotes last year, finishing with 2 goals and 6 assists. And I would expect that he will probably play until Murphy is ready to go for Carolina, because Murphy's been hurt.
Right.
And we'll get to his injury a little bit later. Center Seth Griffith was claimed by the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Now,
he was with the Bruins.
right. I thought he was a roster guy.
No, I didn't think he was going to make the roster, but he had a good season with the American League team last year. I don't have his numbers right in front of me, but he wasn't quite a point-a-game player in the American League last year, but he was close.
The Providence Bruins.
Yeah, with the Providence Bruins, right.
Okay.
And he's been in there, he was kind of an up and down player. He played 34 games, I think, with the Bruins. Mm-hmm. Over the past couple of seasons, because he was one of the guys that would, guy got hurt, they'd call him up, right, and then they'd send him back down. Well, right. up until last year, they could do that freely with him without penalty. But now that he's a little bit older and has played a little bit more, that he had to pass through waivers, and Toronto Maple Leafs claimed him. And by the looks of things, he's going to be in their opening night roster. Mm-hmm. Another Carolina Hurricanes acquisition, Martin Ferk. 23, skated 67 games last year in the American Hockey League for Grand Rapids, so that's Detroit's minor league team, and had 44 points, which is not a bad season for an American League. He scored 27 goals. Yeah, 27 goals. So it'd be interesting to see, and the latest roster I saw is Ferk will be in the opening night roster for Carolina. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of interesting.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I had for transactions, unless you saw any come across. We'll move on to injuries.
No, you got everyone. The only one that was surprising to me, I guess it would be in transactions, was the Winnipeg Jets sending longtime goalie Andre Pavlik to Manitoba, their AHL franchise.
Yeah.
Basically, he was their number one goalie for a good bit of the last 2 or 3 years. You'd have to say Andre Pavlik was their number one goalie, their go-to goalie. And so that makes Connor Hellebuck and Michael Hutchinson, they made the cut, and they will remain with the team. So those are the 2 goalies for the Jets going forward. I was very surprised by that.
Yep. Well, what surprised me more about that is that he passed through waivers and nobody claimed him, because he had to pass through waivers, I believe.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
If he's going to Manitoba, Pavlik's played enough in the NHL, and he's old enough now. He would have had to pass through waivers in order to get to Manitoba. And the fact that he didn't get claimed tells you what the rest of the league also thinks about him.
Yeah. And he's a good goalie.
Yep.
I mean, I've seen him, big presence in the net. I was really surprised by that.
He's had flashes of brilliance, but he's also been weak at times too. He was kind of inconsistent, which is not something you need if you're gonna make a long, deep run in the playoffs. So okay, well, let's move on to injuries then. The biggest one that has happened over the last week was Sidney Crosby. Once again, got a concussion. This time it happened in practice.
I think it was his first practice back after Team Canada winning.
First practice back, yeah. He said it happened on Friday. It was his second practice, actually, according to the article I saw, with the team since helping Team Canada win the championship. No timeline has been laid out as far as his return, although I think he's listed technically at day-to-day. He's had a lot of concussion issues in the past, of course. He's missed 101 games during the 2010-2011 and 2011-2012 seasons, and then missed the end of the regular season. Yeah.
There was that one stretch where he came in And I think it was 2011, 2012. And then remember, he played 2 games.
Right.
And the very first major hit he took, he was gone again.
Yep. Yeah, I do remember that. And
um,
that was the end of that season.
That's right.
They shut him down for the rest of the year. And then he came back in November of 2011, played 8 more games, and then got hit again. And that sidelined him till March 15th.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the concussion issues seem to be adding up with him, which is kind of concerning, particularly to Pittsburgh fans, on his prognosis going forward. It seems like this one is kind of a minor one because I saw an article today where it looks like he may only miss a couple of games this time around. But you know what they say about concussions? Every one adds up and they get progressively worse. So,
right.
I mean, the concussion issues ended Paul Correa's career in Anaheim.
Chris Pronger, too.
Pronger, yeah. Both Lindros brothers. I mean, the list is long and distinguished of guys that have shortened careers due to concussions. So hopefully Crosby can, for Pittsburgh fans anyway, not so much for us.
No, I hate to see that.
I
hope that he comes back and it's a short stay on the sidelines because of this. It's really not an injury that's fully known, by doctors, and where they can say, his prognosis is good and that he's, out for 1 to 2 weeks, and you can put some stock in the fact that he's going to come back at the end of that time. I mean, he has to be cleared by a physician before he can hit the ice.
Right.
And that could happen tomorrow. It could happen, a month from now.
And I've got a story later on that we're going to talk about that's going to talk about that the protocol, so to speak, for that. So anyway. And a lot of the suspensions we've seen are actually all the suspensions we've seen so far have been due to hits to the head. So the NHL is really trying to crack down on this head contact stuff. Mm-hmm. And you see it at the lower levels too. We had in our referee clinic a couple of weeks ago, that was a major discussion on. They want us penalizing any contact to the head. They want us penalizing it, basically throw the book at them to get these kids to stop targeting people's heads. So anyway, Jonathan Huberdeau is going to be out 3 to 4 months with a leg injury. Huberdeau was injured with about 6:45 remaining in the first period of a preseason game against the New Jersey Devils. And his left ankle was cut by a skate.
Yeah.
Huberdeau was behind the net and engaged with Devils forward Sergei Kalinin when Kalinen's right leg came up and then down on the back of Huberdeau's left ankle. He just signed a 6-year contract worth $5.9 million back on September 7th. That's actually an extension that begins at the end of this season or next season. And he had 20 goals, 39 assists, 59 points in 76 games last year. He's clearly one of their future studs on that team. Yeah. And that's a huge blow to Florida.
Yeah, that's a big loss. That's a big loss. Did you see the replay on it?
No, I did not see the video on that one.
Yeah, he had trouble getting off the ice, walking. I mean, and the danger is when that injury occurs, and it's happened. I've seen it happen several times. A player will, lose his defenseman or a scuttle on the boards, a scrum, and the player will lose his balance, and he's trying to get his skate back to the ice so he can retain his balance, and it was a fluke thing.
Yeah.
Well, you can sever somebody's Achilles tendon very easily.
I was going to say, if it's the back of the ankle, wouldn't that be the Achilles?
Yeah, I didn't read anywhere where it damaged that though. I haven't heard anywhere where that's the injury that occurred.
Because if this is an Achilles rupture, you're looking at a year. Those take a long time to heal from. So hopefully it's not an Achilles rupture, that it's just a tear of some kind. But 3 to 4 months is still, it's about 2/3 of the regular season. 3/4 of the regular season. So hopefully he'll come back soon. And that's actually not the only injury that Florida has had. But anyway, Carolina Hurricanes defenseman Ryan Murphy will miss 3 to 4 weeks because of a lower body injury. Murphy, 23, was expected to begin the season on the 3rd defensive pair for the Hurricanes. Murphy was selected in the first round, 12th overall of the 2011 draft, has 35 points in 124 regular season games. Now, the talk about Murphy in Carolina was this was a put up or shut up year for him. So having an injury like this is not going to be a good start to that.
Right.
Because they've been waiting and waiting and waiting for this guy to, come out and be the first round pick that they spent a first round pick on him. So you would think he would be, they're loaded with defensemen in Carolina, with defensive prospects in particular. So to lose him, although it is 3 to 4 weeks, it's probably the reason they claimed Martin Ferk from Detroit. So Ferk will take his place at least until he's back, and then they'll duke it out to see who wins from there or wins the job from there. All right, Flyers defenseman Michael Del Zotto will miss 4 to 5 weeks because of a lower body injury. Del Zotto is entering his third season with the Flyers at 4 goals, 9 assists, 52 games last year. He missed the final 28 games of the regular season and the Flyers' 6-game loss to the Capitals in the Eastern Conference first round with a wrist injury. So this time it's a lower body injury. And you know him from his time with the Rangers, of course.
Yes. Yeah, he ran the power play for the Rangers, and he was traded straight up for Kevin Kline.
Oh, okay.
And I think, he went to Nashville. Kline came over to our team, and I really felt like he'd fit in well in Nashville, but they moved him again in another year, I think. But Kline's worked out awesome for us. I mean, It was a great trade. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, you got McDonough now too, so that you don't need a power play quarterback if you got McDonough. Yeah. All right. So Flyers center Scott Lofton will miss 3 to 4 weeks because of a lower body injury, and defenseman Brandon Manning is week to week because of an upper body injury. Lofton had 4 shots on goal in 4 preseason games. He was the 2012 20th overall pick, had 21 points in 71 games last year, and that was his first year entirely in the NHL. Manning was a +1 with 7 shots on goal in 2 preseason games. Last season, he had 1 goal and 7 points, averaging 16 minutes of ice time in 56 games. Again, another Flyers. So a couple of Flyers prospects are going to be hurt to start the year. Now, speaking of Florida, Nick Bjugstad will miss 4 weeks with a broken hand. The Florida Panthers center will miss at least 4 weeks because of a broken hand he sustained in the first period of the preseason game against Dallas on the 4th of October. So that's another real big loss for Florida, although it is only for a few weeks. But that doesn't it doesn't put them in a good spot to start the season for sure.
Not at all. Those are two. If you talk about losing two players they could ill afford to lose, you just named them.
Huberdeau and Bjugstad. Yeah.
Bjugstad.
Yep.
Aaron Ekblad is. They better be, somebody better be protecting him.
Yeah, put a cage around him.
Yeah.
Put a full body cage around him.
Yeah.
All right, on to Bruins injury news. Adam McQuaid, Austin Czarnik, and Kevin Miller are going to all be on the sidelines to start the season this week. McQuaid is day-to-day with an injury suffered last week. Miller is being evaluated for an injury that happened in an overtime preseason win against the Flyers. And it looks like that Miller is going to be out for an extended period of time, according to Bruins GM Don Sweeney. Czarnik is going to be out while going through the concussion protocol after sustaining a cheap headshot, if you ask me, from Flyers defenseman Radko Gudas last weekend.
He's a repeat offender. I really would love to hear your opinion on this because I have one. I watched the replay on it, and it was a dirty, dirty hit.
You want to hear my real opinion? We'd have to change this episode from clean to explicit. Okay? Because I saw the video on that, and there was absolutely no need for it. The hit was late, and he targeted straight to his head. He basically left his feet and launched into Czarnik's head. And people in Boston are really, really ticked off at this guy. So I hope
6 games was mild, didn't you think?
I would think so. Yeah, I
would have went 15 games with the guy for being a repeat offender.
Yeah,
I really would have made a statement. You're gone for a month and a half.
Yeah, that hit was completely avoidable. In fact, I watched the replay, and the defenseman was Christian Ehrhoff had the puck, or Czarnik was passing the puck to Ehrhoff. Ehrhoff had the puck on his stick when that hit was delivered. So that's how late this hit was. And ridiculous.
Yeah.
That they let guys like this run around the league. So, and I was really looking forward to Czarnik starting the team. He was gonna be on he's on the 23-man roster. but he's injured. So I was hoping he'd get to start opening night, but we'll have to wait with him. So now center Jack Eichel will, these are stories that actually come out today. We just got home this afternoon, and these next few stories were ones that just came out today. So center Jack Eichel is going to miss his opening night. He injured his ankle in practice. He was obviously Buffalo's leading goal scorer last season. Got a high ankle sprain during a power play drill at practice. He got tangled up with teammate Zemgus Girgensons and appeared to catch his skate in the ice. He rolled his leg underneath him as he fell backwards to the ice. He immediately screamed out in pain and needed help from his teammates to get off the ice. So the Sabres aren't giving a timetable for his return, but TSN is reporting that he could miss 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah,
Talk about a huge loss. That's
a major injury.
That's a huge injury for Buffalo.
Yeah. I hope he comes back soon, Wayne. I really enjoyed watching him play. Boston Sabres games were fun to watch. First of all, with Rick Jenneret calling the game.
Yeah.
But second of all, Eichel was he was great on the ice. In Boston, in Buffalo, he was, he could score at any time.
He was an amazing player to watch.
Yeah.
In BU and last year for the Sabres. So he's going to be a fun player to watch forever.
Yeah, I agree. Whole career. Buffalo will never let him go.
Okay. Center Patrice Bergeron is day-to-day with a lower body injury and will not play in the Boston Bruins season opening games against the Columbus Blue Jackets at Nationwide Arena on Thursday. He was injured at the end of practice on Tuesday, which was yesterday, but the Bruins would not expand on the nature of the injury or reveal how it happened. Coach Claude Julien described it as not a major injury. It's minor. Mm-hmm. Though Bergeron won't play Thursday, there's a chance that he could join the Bruins during the rest of their season opening road trip, which continues against the Leafs on Saturday and ends against the Jets on Monday. So that's a huge loss for Boston, losing their number one center.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see through the grapevine how the injury would happen. I don't know if that practice on Tuesday was open to the public. A lot of their practices so far this season have been open to the public, so there should be rumor mill flying around as to how that injury happened, but looks like it's more of a day-to-day thing for him anyway.
Which is good news.
Yep. And finally, on the injury front, Montreal Canadiens goaltender Carey Price will miss the season opener because he is out with the flu.
Yes. Just picked that up tonight on NHL Now.
Yep.
Reported that.
I guess he's missed the last 3 practices this week, so they're giving him plenty of time to recover. It seems to be a pretty bad flu. Most guys it's 24 hours and they're back, but with Price, I guess they're giving him plenty of time, and as they should. He's we've alluded to the fact that we both believe that Montreal's success this year rests solely on his shoulders.
I couldn't have said it any better, Wayne.
Okay, now talking about concussion protocol, I'm going to read this article that came out from the NHL real quick. The National Hockey League announced today, and this was either Tuesday or Wednesday when I found this article. They announced today the implementation of a number of new policies and procedures to enhance the NHL, NHLPA concussion protocol. While it remains an individual club's responsibility to identify a player who requires removal from the game and evaluation for a possible concussion, the NHL and NHLPA have agreed to provide additional support to help identify players who require evaluation under the concussion protocol. A new staff of Central League spotters will monitor all games from the player safety room in New York and will be authorized to require a player's removal from play for evaluation for concussion if the player exhibits certain visible signs under the protocol following a direct or indirect blow to the head. In-arena league spotters and on-ice officials will complement the Central League spotters and will also monitor play for signs of possible concussion. Specified sanctions will be imposed on clubs that violate the concussion protocol. Clubs that do not remove a player who requires an evaluation will be subject to a mandatory minimum fine for a first offense, with substantially increased fine amounts for any subsequent offense. Additionally, any player designated for a mandatory evaluation will not be permitted to re-enter the game unless and until he is evaluated by his club's medical staff and cleared to play in accordance with the protocol. The staff of Central League spotters have been retained by the league are all certified athletic trainers who have the clinical experience working in elite level hockey and have received training in the visible signs of concussion in the protocol. The Central League spotters will observe every NHL game via television broadcast. The in-arena league spotters are also employed by the league as off-ice officials. The in-arena spotters also have received training in the visible signs of concussion and will be assigned to ensure that they will be dedicated solely to the spotting function during games in which they have been designated as the in-arena spotter. The in-arena league spotters will observe games live in the arenas, while all spotters, Central and in-arena, will be able to communicate freely with one another during games. Only the Central League spotter will communicate with the club's medical staff if a player requires removal and evaluation under the protocol. On-ice officials are also authorized to require a player's removal for evaluation if they observe a player displaying visible signs of concussion under the protocol, following a direct or indirect blow to the head. In addition, on-ice officials now have the authority to mandate the removal of a player from the game if a player continues to play after a Central League spotter has communicated to the club medical staff that a mandatory evaluation is required. So, they're stepping up their efforts in getting these players out of the game.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting that they're actually having the referees get involved here.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're the ones closest to the players, so they're going to see the signs of this before anybody else does.
What do you as a referee look for that a player is having trouble with a concussion? Is that a fair question?
Well, at the levels that I ref at, it's not really our responsibility to say, hey, you need to get off the ice. You know, there's clearly something wrong there. Obviously, anytime that we see any type of blows to the head, whether it's accidental or whatnot, if it requires a penalty, we're to assess the penalty every time without fail. But sometimes these guys going, they at the lower levels especially, they'll just catch an edge. Nobody knocks them down. They'll catch an edge and go head first into the boards. We immediately blow the whistle in that case, and generally get the. Usually, what they tell us to do is have the coaches get out there, stop the game, get the coaches to go out there and take care of the player. That's essentially our job. Is and let the coaches handle it. They don't want us. Now, obviously, if you have a referee that has a medical background, whether they're doctor, nurse, whatever, EMT, obviously it's okay for them to get involved, but it's not required of us to do anything other than get the coaches out there. Or if it's an adult league player, just give them the time that they need to get off the ice. So, but yeah, that's why I say this is interesting that they're getting the on-ice officials. Now an on-ice official can say, hey, you look woozy, you need to leave the game. And giving them the authority to send a player off the ice is kind of a new thing.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it for injury news. So let's move on to suspensions. There's been 2 in the past week. We already talked about one of them. Radko Gudas of the Philadelphia Flyers was suspended 6 games for his hit on Austin Czarnik during the preseason game in Boston on Saturday the 8th. The incident occurred at 5:47 of the third period. He was assessed a minor penalty for boarding, which I thought was a little too light.
I got it.
Because it wasn't a boarding. I mean, it was a clear elbow or... See, USA Hockey, we have a head contact penalty, and I don't know if the NHL has that or not. Whereas, any hit, if it's a legal hit, if the head is the direct recipient of that hit, we call head contact, and that's automatic. An automatic penalty for us. But the NHL, I don't know if they have a head contact penalty, so they'd have to call it as an elbow or a rough or boarding in this case. But obviously the league took a look at it, thought it was. I did watch the video. They said that the hit was late. It was avoidable, and the head was the primary place of contact, and that, coupled with the fact that he's a repeat offender, made them assess a 6 game. So, and I think next time Philadelphia plays Boston in the regular season, there will be more repercussions for him if he plays.
He's going to get a clean hit placed on him.
He's going to be a marked man for sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, and the other one we had this week was Los Angeles Kings forward Tanner Pearson has been suspended for the remainder of the preseason. Obviously, is over now, and the first 2 regular season games for an illegal check to the head of Edmonton Oilers defenseman Brandon Davidson during a preseason game in Vernon, BC on October 2nd. This one's a little bit older, but I look back in our show notes, and I don't believe we talked about this particular incident last week, so that's why I included it in this week's, even though this technically did occur last week.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't think we talked about it.
Yep. Pearson was assessed a match penalty for an illegal check to the head in game misconduct. So, and then, of course, the league gave him, penalizing a guy to preseason games is essentially nothing, but 2 regular season games is something there. Okay, let's move on to some of the interesting stories that have happened over the past week. One that I thought was really interesting was there are 2 NHL goalies, at least to start with, that are going to have color-changing masks, which is going to be kind of cool to see. It's of course, goalies are allowed to do whatever they want with their masks. They can paint it in any way they want as long as it matches the uniform, essentially. They're given a lot of leeway on what they can put on their masks. But Quebec-based mask artist company Silabrush is a company that does goalie masks. They've developed a paint that can now change colors with the help of Sub-Zero white paint. Silabrush designer Sylvie Marcela and her partner Alexander Mathis have created a color-changing mask. Tampa Bay Lightning goalie Andrei Vasilevsky and Boston Bruins goalie Anton Khudobin, interesting, they're both Russians, are the first in the NHL to debut the mask, which change when hit by water. Silabrush, based on the Montreal suburb of Saint-Marc-sur-de-Lac, has designed masks for Vasilevsky and Khudobin since 2012-13. The chin area on Vasilevsky's mask changes from white to Tampa Bay blue, and reflective images of the Lightning's logo, lightning bolts, and Russian Firebird are displayed when water hits it. For Khudobin's mask, Silabrush put a fierce Bruin on the left side and the Bruins' home TD Garden on the right. His nickname Dobby is spelled out in his chin in front of the white paint that changes to brown when touched by water. So obviously if you're watching these 2 goalies play, when you see them take a squirt from the water bottle, that's when you're going to see the change, the mask change colors. And I did read the article further, and they talked about how these 2 aren't going to be the only ones that are going to have this, that you're going to start seeing it. They're already developing masks for several other goalies around the league.
That's going to be neat.
So it's going to be pretty cool. I always like watching goalie masks. That's always been a thing since I was a kid, ever since these masks came about. Ever since they started changing from the traditional helmet with the cage and started developing these new masks, I always thought, how cool it is, these different masks that are out there.
That's right. It is cool.
And the other interesting story I've got is the Nashville Predators have won the Stanley Cup.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. At least as far as EA Sports NHL 2017 simulation goes, anyway. The Stanley Cup will be bound to Nashville if the NHL 17 simulation is correct. And they will beat in the final none other than the Montreal Canadiens in 6 games in the final. In the simulation, Predators forward Philip Forsberg wins the Conn Smythe Trophy with 26 points in 24 Stanley Cup playoff games. So along the way, the Predators beat Minnesota, Dallas, and then San Jose in order to get to the Cup finals. And Montreal defeats Florida, Tampa Bay, and Washington. Man, if they can get through those 3 teams, they deserve the Cup.
Oh, man.
Or at least they deserve to get to the final.
Yeah.
Those are 3 tough teams there. And as a personal note to our teams, the Bruins, Rangers, and Canes will all miss the playoffs. And if you want to see how your team did in the simulation, I've included a link to the article in the show notes. Okay.
I had one additional interesting story.
Sure.
And that was in regards to the Blackhawks lending their support to the Cubs, hoping that they can win the World Series for the first time since 1908. I saw where I believe it was Jonathan Taves threw out the first ball.
I did see that, yeah.
And, I, having lived in Chicago, I lived in Chicago for 2 years. I went to a lot of Cubs games, even though I can't say that I'm a Cubs fan. I love going to Wrigley Field.
That's one field I'd love to go to. I've been to Fenway Park many, 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 many times in my life, but Wrigley Field's one place I'd like to go just to say I've been there.
Yeah.
And I've got a good friend of mine from college that actually lives in Chicago, and he puts up on Facebook and Twitter all the time whenever he goes to a Cubs game. So I'm always jealous whenever he goes.
Oh, one day you'll go, and it's a blast. It's unlike anything I've ever been to, but I've never been to Fenway Park. So,
And while we're on the subject of baseball, I had it later on in the show notes, but what's with all the celebrations in the playoffs where they're popping champagne for just winning a series? Hockey players don't do that.
yeah,
I think that's gotten a little out of hand, don't you think?
somebody's got a lot of money.
Well, I just think, great. They're popping champagne when they make the playoffs. Okay, I get that. It's a long season. Only 12 teams make it? 8 teams, whatever it is.
8 teams, yeah.
8 teams out of 30 make it. Okay, I get that. Making the playoffs. Let's celebrate. But now you got teams celebrating after winning the divisional series.
Yeah.
And you've got, I don't know, that you're going to see it again at the end of the American and National League Championship Series. I'm like, come on.
It's a lot of champagne.
Yeah. I mean, you hockey players don't celebrate until they win the cup. That's it.
That's right. Yeah.
You don't win the cup, you don't get champagne, period.
You might get some chum red ale, but you won't get champagne.
That's right. Only in San Jose you'll get chum red ale. Yeah. I don't know. It's just, I guess, different sports, I guess. Okay, so let's move on to talking about our individual teams. Now, in the show notes, I've listed the projected opening day rosters for Boston, the Rangers, and Carolina. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but looks like, as in terms of the Rangers are concerned anyway, that what I could find was it looks like on D, they're going to have McDonough, Girardi as the first pairing. Stahl, Klein as the second. Holden, Clendenning as the third.
Yeah.
Does that jive with what you're...
I can see it that way. The only one that might be is it might be Holden. Actually, it might be Clendenin, Dylan McElrath. But no, Nick Holden may very well, because of his NHL experience, may very well win that third pairing.
Yeah. Okay. And up at forward, they've got Vesey on the top line with Stepan Zuccarello. And then they've got Kreider, Zibanejad, Buchnevich as the second line. Miller, Hayes, and Nash as the third line. Grabner, Peary, Fost as the fourth line. I was surprised to see Vesey the top line already.
Yeah,
and then Nash relegated to third line.
Yeah, I was really surprised to see that. But I thought he was going to be second line. I really did think he was going to make second line. So it's not a huge jump up.
Yeah.
But it is. It's above where I thought he would play. He must be doing very well in practice.
Well, he had a great preseason. I mean, didn't he lead the team in scoring in preseason?
Vesey?
Yeah.
I believe it was Brandon Peary and I think Brandon Peary and Mika Zibanejad both tied with 6 points.
You're right.
In preseason.
Yeah, you're right. I just looked at it.
But,
for some reason I saw Vesey was up there, but I
see, had a lot of chances and skated very well. And I just tell you this, I think Vigneault really likes Vesey. I think he is happy to have him on the team. And he's pushing players to be better. I know there's still a lot of fallout over what's happened.
Yeah.
I read one article somewhere where somebody was saying, well, his prime in the NHL is from 23 to 27. And I won't go into names as to who was writing that, but I mean, he was a Boston sports writer, and if at all his favorite team is the Bruins, why did they sign Brad Marchand past his prime?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand that. It depends on the individual athlete and how good of a player he is. Look at Jaromir Jagr. He's playing lights out, and he's 43 or 44 years old. So I don't think that has any bearing on it. I'm going to stick up for Vesey until his play on the ice dictates that I shouldn't.
Yep. Well, it really depends on the guy. I mean, there's a lot of speculation around the league that because the league is younger, faster than it ever has been before, that the quote-unquote prime for a player is 23 to 28-ish now, whereas years ago it was when it was a slower, big man, more physical, more grinded out type of league. It was more 28 to 34 back in those days. But it really depends on the guy, Yeah. If a guy takes good care of himself like Jagr does, they can play forever. I mean, or at least until their body breaks down
Right.
in terms of injuries. So it really does depend on the guy, but it has become a young man's game, and Vesey is, brand new out of college. So, and he does possess that speed that is very valuable in today's game. So, and with Stepan and Zuccarello, he's probably one of the only players that can keep up with those two guys.
And that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
That's a very good point.
So they're going to put guys that are similar style players together on that one. So, and of course, in net with the Rangers, you've got Lundqvist, Ranta. So I didn't think there was any surprises there. Now, as far as Boston's concerned, obviously we've talked about some of the injuries they've had. So their opening day rosters are going to look a little bit different. And actually, the one that I've got is changed. I wrote these rosters down last night before the Bergeron story came out. But on D, I had Chara, Carlo. This is how they were at the last practice anyway. Krug, O'Gara, and Lyles, Colin Miller are your 6D. And then Morrow is your 7th D, so he'll be sprinkled in there. He'll probably see some time in the first few games. At forward, we've got Marchand, Bergeron, Pasternak, of course. Bergeron, it will depend on when he comes back. Second line, Spooner, Krejci, Backes. Third line, Bolesky, Nash, and Hayes. And fourth line, Heinen, Moore, Asieri. And then, of course, Austin Zarnik will get inserted in there, probably taking Asieri's spot when Zarnik's ready to go.
Yeah.
And then, as no surprise, Raskin, Hudobin are the two goalies there. So I was pretty happy that Carlo made the team, and the fact that they're putting him on the top line with Chara, it makes him look pretty good there. I mean, they couldn't put Chara Krug because they had put them together last year, and it just didn't seem to work out with those two together. They're just two different style defensemen. So Carlo is a better fit there. I think that's why he's up in the top pairing, just because he's a better fit to play with Chara.
I see.
And then Krug obviously is going to probably quarterback the power play for Boston, even though he is second defenseman. They like to do this thing with Chara where they park him in front of the net to just be, a pain in the ass for the goalie because he's so big. So, but obviously these lines are not set in stone. They can change at any moment. Now in Carolina, our defensive pairings are going to be Slavin Falk, Hainsey Pesce, and Hannafin McCown. Not too much of a surprise there. Although I was hoping that Fleury would have made the team because he was drafted a year or two before Hannafin, but he's developed a lot more slowly than Hannafin has. And then at forward we've got Skinner, Rask, Stempniak, Nordstrom, Stahl, Nestrashil, Teravainen, Lindholm, Aho. So they put all the European guys together on a line.
Yeah,
and then
I've heard I listened to a few podcasts this week. There's very high praise coming for Sebastian Aho, that he is going to be way up the list in terms of NHL rookies for the season.
Yeah,
he's getting a lot of looks from around the league, and especially by the media.
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised they've got him on the third line. And I think from what I understand, the fact that he's on the third line for at least to start the season, is to get him acquainted by putting him with guys that he's familiar with. I mean, Teravainen is Aho's Finnish, so Teravainen is another Finn, and then Lindholm, of course, is Swede. But they play a similar style game in Sweden and Finland, so put him together with those guys, probably help him ease him into the league, so to speak.
I see.
But I think by the end of the year, you're going to see Aho either up in the second or even first line. I was kind of surprised to see Stempniak up on the first line. He was a third or fourth liner for Boston last year, so
right.
Come to Carolina and automatically on the top line.
Yeah.
I think that's temporary. And of course, the fourth line is going to be Bickle, McClent, and Ferk. And I know Bickle and McClement are physical guys. I'm not familiar with Ferk on what style of play he does, but we'll find out for sure. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the NCAA Minute. The only thing I'm going to talk about this week, of course, we finished 2 weeks of college hockey. The first week was mostly exhibition games. Last week was the first weekend where most college hockey teams played other college hockey teams. And we had a new poll that came out in the past week. And I'll just run down through the top 10 real quick. I've included the entire top 20 in the show notes. But at number 10, we've got Denver. Number 9, we've got Minnesota. Number 8, we've got UMass Lowell. Number 7, St. Cloud State. Number 6, BC. Number 5, Notre Dame. Number 4, Minnesota Duluth. Number 3, Quinnipiac. Number 2, Boston University. And number 1, again this week, North Dakota. So my first observation there is BU was moved up from 4. I mentioned last week how I was surprised that they were that low given the draft class that they brought in. Mm-hmm. And they finally are given BU props for that draft class, and they moved them up to number 2. I would guess that they're going to end up at number 1 at some point this year. But until somebody knocks off North Dakota, they're going to be North Dakota will be at number 1, almost unanimous, pretty close to it. So, and on a personal note, Maine actually received votes in this poll. They didn't get any votes last week. In fact, the coaches poll for the conference, the Hockey East, had Maine dead last, but Maine beat RPI twice last week.
Right.
So they earned some votes. If they went to a ranking that included more than 20 teams, Maine would have been ranked 27th.
Oh man, that's not bad at all.
So to go from almost, no respect whatsoever from the college hockey pollsters up to 27th is a pretty big jump for them. So
that's great.
So, and of course, college hockey will continue this weekend with a whole bunch of games. All right, so that's all I had for the college hockey minute. So let's move on to the KHL minute. And I've got 3 different things on here. I know you had one that was a little bit different, so I'll just briefly do my 3, and then we'll go from there. So the first one I've got is Sergei Mozyakin set another record last week, and the record he set was his 250th regular season KHL goal, and that moved his points tally up to 421 for Magnitogorsk, and that actually tied the club record for career points for that team.
Yeah, that's Magnitogorsk is really good.
Yep.
They are a powerful team.
And of course, Mozyakin has been there for years, so
yeah.
So that happened last week. Also happened last week, Jokerit upset CSKA, the old Red Army team, and it was a 6-3 win. So that made big headlines over there in Russia, because of how powerful CSKA has been so far this year, and Jokerit was struggling. So that was the big news story in terms of results for the league last year. And then I also saw an article where Brandon Bochenski, I don't know if you remember that name, but he played a lot of years in the NHL. He played a little bit for Boston, and I believe he played for Buffalo as well. He played for a few teams in the NHL. But he set a record last week. He's got 149 career goals in the KHL, and that makes him the all-time leading goal scorer for foreign players in the KHL. And they did a big article on him, and he's saying that he really enjoys playing there. It suits his style of play. He doesn't expect to leave. He will retire as a player in the KHL. He doesn't expect to come back to the NHL anytime in the future, even though he's had offers, he said.
Oh, wow.
So Brandon Bochenski is definitely happy playing in the KHL as a foreign player.
Very good.
So what was yours?
Good. Mine, I'm gonna. However his season turns out, we don't know. But I was very happy that Pavel Buchnevich made the Rangers squad. He comes in from the KHL, and this is a player that did it, I believe, the right way. He was drafted 75th by the Rangers in 2013, I believe.
Okay.
And he was chosen the 3rd round, and of course, as is with many players, the team will look to have him play in the minor leagues or to refine his skills for a year or two. And Buchnevich actually, it was for 3 years, played in the KHL and amassed a very good record. He scored a total of 37 goals and had 50 assists in 3 years with Severstal, I'm not going to get this right. Severstal Sherapivets.
Yep.
And that's his hometown. I wish I'm sorry for murdering that name. Sharapovitz. Russia is his hometown. He played with them, Severstal Sharapovitz.
Okay.
And then switched to SKA St. Petersburg late in the year, where Pavel Datsyuk plays. But he did it the right way. He came over to this country. He's living with a family that speaks only he speaks only English when he's there to learn the language.
Yep.
Really wants to play in the NHL, and his dream came true. So I was very happy to hear that, and I figured it fit in under the KHL minute, being a KHL player, a guy who's played several years there and finally made it.
Sure, why not? And actually, I'll add to that. I believe the KHL, well, I know the KHL allows 17-year-old players. So what it does allow, because the NHL has a minimum draft age of 18, you got to be 18 by a certain, I don't think you got to be 18 at the draft. You just have to, because I've seen 17-year-old kids get drafted, but you have to be 18 before the start of the season.
Okay.
For the NHL. But the KHL allows 17-year-olds to play in their league. So what it gives those the Russian stars in particular a chance to do is they get to play a year or two in their home country at the professional level before coming over here and playing in the NHL, if they're that good.
Right.
So it gives the Russian public a chance to see them play before they leave Russia to come play over here. So Buchnevich is one of those guys that did just that. Yeah,
that's right. He's big and he's creative.
Yep,
he's a creative player from what I've seen in preseason.
I'm looking forward to watching him play. I think he's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah. So
you've obviously seen him play. Because I haven't really been watching any of the Rangers preseason games other than highlights. So. But
I saw him score his first goal, and I jumped up out of the seat and got popcorn everywhere.
And not too long from now, we'll both get to see him play, as our teams will be playing each other very early this year.
Yes, looking forward to that.
It's coming up in a week or two here. All right, so let's move on to our picks of the week.
Yes, sir.
And the pick I've got, one of them we've already talked about, and when we got on our tangent about baseball, I wanted to say, hey, what's the deal with the champagne after every series? So we've already talked about that one, so that one's gone.
Okay.
My other story I had was, I don't know if you saw this, but let me get the link up here. There was a preseason game early in the year between the Dallas Stars and the Florida Panthers. And the game was being played at a neutral site in London, Ontario. And both teams showed up with their white jerseys. So a big oops goes out to the trainers or the front office staff, or I don't know who's to blame for this, but as a referee, this is a freaking nightmare to have two teams wearing the same color. And the article that I've got a link to in the show notes links to an article that has pictures of the game, and it's the weirdest thing to see both teams in their away whites.
Wow.
So I read the article, and it talks about how I guess it's the training staff's responsibility to make sure that they've got the right jerseys to the game. And Dallas's training staff said they thought that Florida, because they were officially the home team for that game, they thought Florida was going to bring their home reds. So the Dallas brought their whites. And Florida, because they thought, I guess they were playing each other again a couple nights later in Dallas, they thought that they'd only need their whites because Dallas would bring their greens. So both teams showed up in London, Ontario with their whites.
Oh, wow.
And they essentially played the game. And it had to have been a nightmare for the referees because, it's hard enough to keep track of the teams, as fast as they are. I've reffed a lot of high-level games, certainly nothing at NHL level, but I've done, a lot of adult league games that have involved former pro players, and I've refereed, all the way up through junior age kids. And the game is fast. And if you get two teams out there with similar colors, it's hard enough as a player to see your teammates. It must have been hard for the players there must have been lots of passes that went to the wrong guy they thought was, it just had to have been ugly.
You're right.
And then the referees to officiate the game is that much more difficult. But yeah, it was an interesting story to see. Now in the regular season, they probably wouldn't have gone through with the game. They would have found, or the home. Well, it was because they were at a neutral site, so neither neither team had both sets of jerseys. So if that would have happened in the regular season, the home team would have switched to the opposite color, and nobody would even have known the difference. But because of the fact that it was played at a neutral site and both teams showed up with their whites, nobody had their homes.
That's something.
I guess they decided to play the game anyway because there's pictures. There's pictures showing both teams.
Yeah, that'd be difficult for me just thinking about it.
Yeah. All right. So on to your story.
I wanted to just quickly. I know we're getting here on time, getting on, but my pick of the week: Nick and Janelle Foligno. Nick Foligno is the captain of the Columbus Blue Jackets. This week, they wanted to remain anonymous in their donations, but changed their minds and made their donations public at the request of both hospitals where their daughter Milana received a diagnosis and a treatment for her congenital heart defect. She's now 3 years old, and this treatment, of course, saved her life. But the Folignos together pledged $1 million, which was split among hospitals, the Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus and the Boston Children's Hospital in Boston, Mass., where she actually had her surgery, the treatment for her congenital heart defect. Nick Foligno said in a statement, "I have a very special place in my heart for Columbus and Boston because of the procedure they did there. But Columbus especially, because this is where I live. This is my home." So, I'm just bringing it up again as another NHL athlete and his family bringing to the fore something that it actually touches my life. My grandson has had a congenital heart defect and had to have surgery.
Yeah.
So I know a little bit about it. And I'm bringing that to the fore for people to think about, and again, the NHL taking the lead in what's being done is just tremendous, and I believe that Nick Foligno needs to be commended for that, and I'm sure he is, but I wanted to just have a special moment on our show for that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a fantastic story to end with for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
And with that, we'll go ahead and close the show. There's a few things I want to remind everybody. Number one, we do stream our recording of this show live on YouTube now. If you go to youtube.com and just do a search for The Hockey Nuts, our channel will pop right up. And you can actually watch the show. We generally record on Wednesday evenings at around 6 p.m. Eastern. Occasionally we'll push it back to Thursday or move ahead to Tuesday if one of us has something going on Wednesday night that we can't get together and do it. But most weeks it's Wednesday night about 6 o'clock-ish when we go ahead and record the show. So if you do want to watch us record it live, you can come on YouTube and watch us, and we interact with the live audience either before or after the recording of the show. During the recording, we pretty much ignore the chat, but before and after, we do interact. And also, you can get the show. You can listen to it on our website at thehockeynuts.com. And if you want to give us some email or voice feedback, you can email the show at feedback@thehockeynuts.com. Or you can call our voicemail box at 919-960-1718. You can leave a voice message in there, and any feedback we get we'll address in future shows or future episodes. You can tweet me. I'm at Wayne Halley 9. Steve is at Steve, why do I keep wanting to say your name out? At SBall504man is his Twitter account. And our Facebook page, I do put on articles. Anytime I see hockey-related stuff on Facebook, I'll forward it out to the Hockey Nuts Facebook page, and that's at facebook.com/thehockeynuts. And our YouTube channel, of course, we're going to have our video recordings. When we record the show, those will be kept as videos on there. And I may add in the future some highlight videos and whatnot. I haven't decided what, other than putting our recording of the show on the YouTube page, what other content we'll include on there, but If you want to see what we have to offer, we'll just go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll get to see everything that we do in the future. So other than that, we're pretty much done for the week.
Yes, sir.
And we're ready to go watch games. We're already an hour into the first game. So
I'm not going to miss the Blackhawks game tonight, Wayne, so I'm going to sign off relatively quickly.
Yeah, that game starts, right now, right? Yeah. It's 8 o'clock on the East Coast, so yeah.
But I did want to say it's a pleasure working with you again. I had a blast. This is a blast each week for me, and I find myself looking forward to it a couple days in advance.
Yep,
So
do I.
Thanks again so much for this opportunity.
Well, good. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close the show. And until next week, we'll catch you later.